I'm back with attorney Joseph McBride. You can follow him on Twitter at McBride Law NYC. His website, McBrideLawNYC.com. We're talking about January 6th. Joe, you mentioned this word entrapment, and you also mentioned the uphill battle in which you're trying to navigate against, swamp judges and swamp juries and the whole kind of contaminated DC environment. The question I have is this. It seems finally that there is new information coming out about January 6th. Tucker Carlson, of course, had some videos a week or so ago. Let me start with that, because there was new information on the shaman guy, Jacob Chansley, but there was then a sort of, as far as I could tell, an abrupt halt in the videos. If you have 40,000 hours of footage, it's preposterous to me that you'd find 3 clips. Speaking honestly, do you think that Fox kind of got to Tucker and shut him down because expectations were so high? And while what was delivered the first day was pretty impressive, it appears like, what? That's it? There's nothing more? What are your thoughts about this?
So my inclinations are, I think I share what the general public shares, right? Tucker's team is incredibly talented. They did, in their defense, have a limited time to go through the stuff. We've been going through this stuff for 2 years. They had a few weeks. But within that time, they were able to focus on Jacob Chansley and the lies about Officer Sicknick. I thought they did a good job there. I did think that on the second night that something distinctly different happened. There are different theories about that. One theory is that the producers or the higher-ups at Fox News likely shut them down. I think that makes sense. I can speak from experience from having gone on Tucker's show. I have been over the target on his show with regard to some similar matters. And, I kind of got shut down too. And when you're over the target, people get very uncomfortable, and the powers that be tend to pull the plug on situations like that. I think we should give credit where credit's due. Tucker did a good job of opening the door and refreshing the recollection of the American public to say, hey, look, these are 2 shiny examples of lies, blatant lies in your face. Jacob Chansley got a tour. We all knew that happened. They didn't share that information with his lawyers. He's doing 4 years in jail because of it. That's a grave miscarriage of justice. And Officer Brian Sicknick, turns out he was walking around and he was alive and well and died from natural causes, a day or so after January 6th. It had nothing to do with January 6th. So peddling the misinformation was proffering this story to the public that Officer Sicknick and other officers died on January 6th. And that was a blatant lie. I think it's incumbent upon myself, good professionals and people like you, Dinesh, and the American public to demand answers, to demand justice, to demand information, and to demand access to the rest of that video footage so we can make a determination about what happened that day.
It seems to be obvious that this should be released because if you put it out into the public domain, suddenly you now have the ability to identify people maybe who weren't previously identified and so on. Now, let's talk for a moment about this entrapment issue, because I take it that you believe, and I do too, that there was an element of choreography here. Obviously, the FBI didn't stage the entire Trump rally. That was happening anyway, but they knew it was coming. And so the question I have is this. Is it possible that the authorities decided, look, what we need to do is to get some people from this rally, which is going on out there, into the Capitol. And we have to get them into the Capitol at a time when the members are in there, because that will create an immediate sense that they are doing something horrific. And then we have a crackdown. And the purpose of the crackdown is to shut down the debate about election fraud 2020. That's our real objective. And so light security, someone taking down the fences. You've got people like Ray Epps and others egging the crowd on toward the Capitol. Then, as you say, from this document, you've got lots of police plants who, at the very least, are doing nothing to discourage people from going into the Capitol. So will we ever really get to the truth of this? because the left is really indignant. They say, well, of course we have some plants and the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers because we're monitoring these extremist groups and we should be monitoring them. That's a whole different thing from saying that we created an entrapment scheme. How do you think about that issue?
Well, I agree with you. Looking back on this retrospectively, it's very obvious to see what happened and that Trump supporters were, in fact, entrapped. There are two sort of theories of entrapment. There's old school entrapment where you're induced knowingly by an officer, and then there's entrapment by estoppel. Entrapment by estoppel is when you, Dinesh, as a reasonable person, rely on representations made by the government or somebody who appears to be in government, either by writing, by publication, or by word. So, for instance, when the President of the United States says in good faith, walk down to the Capitol and have your voices heard, because he knows there are 8 protests down there that are allotted for the Capitol grounds. People turn around, they look at Constitution and Pennsylvania Avenues, and they see that they are sectioned off as parade routes. And those parade routes take you directly to the Capitol grounds where 8 other allotted protests are. And then you cross this boundary into the protest land, and then you're accused of being illegally on Capitol grounds. That is entrapment by estoppel, 100%. When an officer waves you in or is standing by a door and lets you walk in, and other people are walking around, and he doesn't say, hey, stop, that's entrapment by estoppel. If you have other officers who are saying, hey, come this way, hey, do this, hey, do that, that is old school entrapment. And you also have a theory of defense, what's called outrageous government conduct. And under that theory, it's like the government's conduct was so outrageous that day, they just departed from norms of regular policing and regular doing things the right way, that but for their outrageous conduct, most of what happened would have never happened that day. Do I think that the truth is going to come out? I absolutely do, because the amount of information that's out there is overwhelming. They're not going to be able to suppress it in the day and age that we live in. I'm just more concerned about what they're going to do between now and the day that happens in order to make dependence on the government sort of a permanent thing in this country.
Wow. Thanks very much, Joseph McBride. Great to have you as always. I'm looking forward to having you back as these developments continue to unfold.
God bless you, Dinesh.